When the world thinks of André Rieu, it often imagines a smiling man holding a violin, surrounded by a joyful orchestra, and filling huge stadiums with beautiful waltz music. For decades, he has been known as the King of the Waltz, a performer who brings happiness, emotion, and energy to audiences across the globe. But in early 2024, something unexpected and deeply worrying happened. During a major concert tour, André suddenly appeared weak and unstable on stage. What should have been a magical night quickly turned into a moment of concern. Reports describe how he struggled with his balance, looked confused, and seemed physically unwell. The audience, who came expecting joy and music, instead witnessed a moment of vulnerability. For a man who built his entire career on confidence and charm, this was shocking. Fans around the world began asking questions. What went wrong? Was it just a small illness or something more serious? As news spread, many realized that this was not just a one-time issue. It was a sign of deeper problems that had been building for years. Behind the elegant performances and smiling face, André had been quietly dealing with health challenges that most people never knew about. This moment on stage was not just a sudden collapse. It was a result of a long and difficult journey. It reminded everyone that even the strongest and most successful people can face serious struggles. For André, this was not just about missing a performance. It was about facing a reality he could no longer ignore. His body was sending him a clear message, and the world was watching. Long before that shocking moment on stage, André Rieu had already been dealing with serious health issues. Around 2010, he faced a major challenge when a viral infection affected his inner ear. This might sound like a small problem, but for a musician, especially a violinist, it was extremely serious. The inner ear plays a big role in balance, and without proper balance, performing on stage becomes very difficult. André experienced dizziness, confusion, and a loss of stability. At times, he could not even stand properly, let alone perform in front of thousands of people. This forced him to cancel concerts and take time away from his busy schedule. For someone who was always active and traveling, this was a huge change. He went through months of recovery, including rest and therapy, trying to regain his strength. To the public, it seemed like he had recovered and returned to his normal life. But the truth was more complicated. Even after getting better, the effects of the illness did not completely disappear. He remained sensitive and sometimes struggled with balance issues. Despite this, André continued to tour and perform, pushing himself to meet the expectations of his fans. He loved music deeply and did not want to stop. However, this decision came with a cost. Over time, the pressure of constant travel, long performances, and physical strain began to build up again. His body was not as strong as it once was, but his passion kept him going. This hidden struggle remained mostly unknown to the public until the events of 2024 brought everything into the open. To truly understand André Rieu, it is important to look at his early life. He was born into a family where music was very important, but emotional warmth was often missing. His father was a respected conductor, and his household followed strict rules. Discipline was a big part of daily life, and there was little space for freedom or emotional expression. André grew up in an environment where expectations were high, and mistakes were not easily forgiven. His mother also demanded excellence, especially in education and behavior. While this kind of upbringing helped him develop strong skills, it also created emotional distance. He did not always feel supported or understood. However, music became his escape. When he started learning the violin at a young age, he found something that gave him joy and comfort. One of his early teachers encouraged him to feel the music, not just play it. This was very different from the strict approach at home, and it helped André develop a deep emotional connection with his art. As he grew older, he began to form his own ideas about music and life. This sometimes led to conflict with his family, especially his father, who had traditional views. Eventually, André made a bold decision to follow his own path. He left home and started building his life independently. This was not easy, but it gave him the freedom to create the kind of music he truly believed in. These early struggles played a big role in shaping his personality. They gave him strength, determination, and a desire to connect with people through music. After leaving home and completing his musical training, André Rieu began to create something unique. Instead of following the traditional path of classical music, he wanted to make it more enjoyable and accessible to everyone. In 1987, he founded the Johann Strauss Orchestra. This was a turning point in his career. Unlike other orchestras, his group focused on fun, emotion, and audience connection. Performers wore bright clothes, moved around the stage, and interacted with the crowd. This was very different from the usual serious and formal style of classical music. At first, some critics did not like his approach. They felt that he was not respecting tradition, but the audience loved it. People who had never been interested in classical music started attending his concerts. His performances became large events, often held in stadiums filled with thousands of fans. Over time, his popularity grew around the world. He sold millions of albums and performed in many countries. His concerts were not just about music. They were about creating a joyful experience. This success made him one of the most famous classical musicians of his time. However, behind the success was a demanding schedule. Touring, rehearsing, and performing required a lot of energy. André continued to work hard, even as his health became more fragile. His dedication to his art was clear, but also meant that he was constantly pushing himself beyond his limits. The events of 2024 became a turning point for André Rieu. What happened on stage was not just a small health issue. It was a clear warning. His body could no longer handle the same level of pressure as before. The collapse forced him and his team to take a step back and rethink everything. Concerts were canceled, tours were paused, and fans were left disappointed but concerned. For André, this was a difficult moment emotionally as well. He had always seen himself as a strong performer, someone who could bring joy no matter what. Now he had to accept that things had changed. This realization was not easy, but it was necessary. Instead of ignoring the problem, he began to take it seriously. His family, especially his son Pierre, played an important role during this time. Pierre helped manage his schedule, making sure that he had enough rest and did not overwork himself. New rules were introduced, including shorter performances, more breaks, and better health care during tours. These changes allowed André to continue doing what he loved, while also protecting his well-being. It was a new way of working, one that focused on balance rather than constant activity. This shift marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life. Today, André Rieu stands as an example of resilience and adaptation. His journey shows that success is not just about talent or fame, but also about how a person handles challenges. After facing health problems and a public setback, he chose to adjust his life instead of giving up. He slowed down, focused on his health, and found new ways to connect with his audience. His concerts may now be more controlled and less intense, but they still carry the same emotion and beauty that made him famous. In many ways, his story has become even more powerful. It reminds people that it is okay to face limits and make changes. It also shows that true strength comes from understanding oneself and making wise decisions. André's legacy is not only about music. It is about perseverance, passion, and the ability to keep going even when things become difficult. His life teaches an important lesson. No matter how successful someone becomes, they are still human. They can struggle, fall, and rise again. And sometimes it is these struggles that make their story truly inspiring. For many years, the life of André Rieu looked like a dream from the outside, traveling across countries, performing in front of thousands of fans, and receiving endless applause may seem exciting and glamorous. However, behind this beautiful image was a lifestyle that demanded constant energy and sacrifice. Touring is not as easy as it looks. It involves long flights, different time zones, late nights, and very little rest. For André, this routine went on for decades. His schedule was often packed with back-to-back concerts, rehearsals, and media appearances. Even when he was not performing, he was preparing for the next show. Over time, this continuous cycle began to take a toll on his body. As he grew older, the physical demands became even more challenging. Simple things like adjusting to a new time zone or recovering from a long performance started to require more effort. Despite these challenges, André continued to push forward. His love for music and his commitment to his fans kept him going, but this also meant that he sometimes ignored warning signs from his body. The pressure to maintain his reputation as a reliable and energetic performer added to the stress. He did not want to disappoint his audience, so he kept performing even when he was not feeling his best. This decision, while understandable, slowly increased the strain on his health. By the time the events of 2024 happened, years of exhaustion and physical stress had already built up. What people saw as a sudden collapse was actually the result of a long period of overwork. This part of his life highlights an important truth. Even the most successful careers can come with hidden costs. In André's case, the price of success was paid through years of physical and emotional pressure that eventually became impossible to ignore. While the physical challenges faced by André Rieu were serious, the emotional side of his journey was just as important. Living with ongoing health issues can be very stressful, especially for someone whose career depends on performance. Every time André stepped on stage, there was always a small fear in the background. What if something went wrong? What if he lost his balance again or felt too weak to continue? These thoughts can create anxiety, even for someone as experienced as him. In addition to this, André had already faced emotional struggles earlier in his life, especially during his childhood. The lack of emotional support from his family left a lasting impact on him. Although he found comfort in music, some of those feelings stayed with him over the years. The loss of close friends and colleagues also added to his emotional burden. For example, when someone you work closely with passes away, it can deeply affect your mental state. These experiences made André stronger, but they also added layers of emotional complexity to his life. Despite everything, he continued to perform and connect with his audience. Music became his way of expressing feelings that he could not always put into words. It helped him deal with stress, sadness, and even fear. However, when his health problems became more serious, even music could not fully protect him from emotional strain. The events of 2024 forced him to face not just his physical limits, but also his emotional ones. It was a moment of truth that required honesty, acceptance, and courage. Instead of hiding his struggles, André began to approach them with openness. This shift allowed him to find new strength, not just as a performer, but as a person. During difficult times, having a strong support system can make a big difference, and this was certainly true for André Rieu. One of the most important figures in his life during his later years has been his son, Pierre. As André's health challenges became more noticeable, Pierre stepped in to help manage not only the business side of things, but also his father's well-being. This was not just a professional role. It was a personal commitment to protect someone he cared deeply about. Pierre understood that continuing the same intense touring schedule was no longer safe. He began to introduce changes that focused on health and sustainability. These included better planning of travel, ensuring proper rest between performances, and having medical support available when needed. He also helped adjust the structure of concerts so that André would not become too exhausted. For example, adding more breaks, including storytelling moments, and creating a slower pace allowed André to conserve energy while still delivering a meaningful performance. This approach showed that success does not always mean doing more. It can also mean doing things more wisely. Beyond Pierre, André was also supported by his orchestra, friends, and fans. The musicians who performed with him were not just colleagues. They were like a second family. They understood his situation and worked together to adapt. Fans, too, showed understanding and concern instead of frustration. This collective support helped André move forward with confidence. It reminded him that he was not alone in his journey. In many ways, this support system became a key part of his recovery and adaptation, allowing him to continue his passion in a healthier and more balanced way. The life story of André Rieu offers many valuable lessons that go beyond music. One of the most important lessons is the importance of listening to one's body. In today's fast-paced world, people often push themselves too hard, ignoring signs of stress and exhaustion. André's experience shows that this can lead to serious consequences. Another important lesson is the value of adaptation. Life does not always go as planned, and sometimes change is necessary. Instead of resisting change, André chose to accept it and adjust his approach. This allowed him to continue doing what he loved, while also taking care of himself. His journey also highlights the importance of support from others. No matter how strong or successful someone is, they still need help at times. Having people who understand and support you can make even the hardest situations easier to handle. Finally, his story reminds us that true success is not just about achievements or fame. It is also about resilience, growth, and the ability to overcome challenges. André's willingness to face his struggles and find a new way forward makes his story truly inspiring. It shows that even in difficult moments, there is always a chance to learn, grow, and move forward with strength and purpose. After the difficult events that shook his health, André Rieu began to rethink the way he performed on stage. For many years, his concerts were full of nonstop energy, long durations, and constant movement. He was known for walking around, engaging with musicians, and keeping the audience entertained from beginning to end. But as his health required more care, this style had to change. Instead of seeing this as a limitation, André and his team turned it into an opportunity to create a different kind of experience. His performances became more balanced and thoughtful. He started including more moments where he could sit, speak to the audience, or simply let the orchestra take the lead. These changes allowed him to save energy without reducing the quality of the show. In fact, many fans found this new style even more personal and meaningful. They felt closer to him because he was sharing more stories and emotions, not just music. This shift also showed his creativity. Instead of repeating the same format, he adapted and found new ways to express his art. It proved that great performers are not defined by how much they do, but by how well they connect with their audience.